All right, thank you so much for staying with the Monday Report. It's time for that conversation. We're calling it the Town Hall, but really we're reflecting on the vetting of the CS nominees that has kicked off officially today in Parliament. It will go all the way to Saturday. All the 24 of them will be facing the panel, being asked various questions to show how ready they are to take over the mantle as cabinet secretaries. And I have with me in studio Honorable Cecily Kariuki, former CS Water and Irrigation Sanitation, also former CS for Health. She's an insider, knows how government works. We'll find out from her what are the things she wishes she knew before she went there, and how does government really work. Also, Professor Alfred Omenya is here with us, urban development plan and also political commentator. Thank you so much for making time. We'll find out from him whether this process is just a simple rubber stamping venture, or does it add value in any way, shape or form. We'd also like to hear your views as well. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Monday Report. Let's start off right now. Prof, and you saw the whole process happening today. What is the true value of this parliamentary process from your perspective?
No, thank you, Trevor, and I'm quite honored, CS Cecily. Thank you being together on the same panel.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is quite exciting. Yeah, I think, Trevor, we should go back to why some of these things were provided for in our constitution. You'll find that really a lot of this has to do with the transparency in public recruitment. It has to do with the participation. These are ways through which the citizen, through elected members of parliament, the representative, and also directly, just in terms of following the process, are able to then see the kind of people that have been recommended to hold some of these public offices, and whether they're competent enough in actually doing so. And these are the questions that we should actually ask ourselves, that why would the president nominate, and then we have this approval process linked with parliament before the president then actually appoints. And this is not just for the CSS, it is something that's happening even in other arms of government. We've seen the judiciary go through a very rigorous process, in terms of the judges of High Court and so on. And, this is a very, very important thing for the architecture of our constitution.
Yeah.
And that's partly why I think that the relevant committees, the members of parliament, those who are being vetted themselves, need to take this as almost sacred.
Yeah.
Because you are going to get into serious service of your nation, and the institutions of the nation are trying to find out, whether you are the suitable person for this particular, position, as it actually were.
Yeah.
And to me, this is what gives confidence to the public that the public institutions and those who are going to hold those offices are up to the task and will actually deliver on the process.
Yeah.
And that is the expectation I have of both parties, of parliament in terms of being the interviewer, as it actually were, and then of course of the nominees themselves, giving the confidence to the public that I'm ready for the job from day one. I know what it takes.
Yeah. I
know the issues that need to be solved and so on. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that we're looking for.
One of the most prominent questions was how much they are worth.
Right.
You had 4,871,271 million. Was that a necessary question, and did it add value from where you stand?
From where I sit, actually, there's an issue. I think Parliament needs to up its game a little bit. Yeah, because it just ends up having this little entertainment value, as it actually were. Yeah, because for me, it doesn't really matter whether. Of course, we need to know the source of your wealth as part of the integrity. It is required of public officers anyway to declare their wealth, as it actually were. But for me, it's not such a big deal. In fact, for me, it is about the actual tasks that these people are meant to do as leaders in shaping policy, as the overall leaders in the various government ministries, giving that broader direction, largely policy, but eventually even the legislative direction and so on. That's what I would be looking for. That does this person know the gaps? Do they know the agenda? Do they know what it takes for them to deliver on their promise from that broader, leadership of the ministry.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, what we end up with now is the question, like you say correctly, where we are splitting hairs because you went to somebody's hotel in Machakos. You make it the entire interview issue.
Yeah.
And almost to the point of being embarrassing, where you're saying, no, I think you're worth more than 400 million because I was in your hotel, and I suspect from a casual look, I suspect that your hotel, cost this much and so on. And for me, that's a total waste of time. And Trevor, this is a problem with many interviews in Kenya. It's not just around Parliament, where you want to catch somebody rather than trying to find out whether this is the right candidate. A lot of interviews in this country, and I've attended a number, can be quite insulting. Instead of trying to find out your ability to do the job, all sorts of trivial matters then are brought on the table. I'm not saying that some of these things are, should be wished away. But all I'm saying is that even as we ask people peripheral questions, it is important that we ask them core questions relating to what they will actually be doing and how they'll be doing it.
All right. Honorable Cecily, you've been there as an insider, the CS. What do you wish someone would have told you before you went there? Because you also went through this entire vetting process. Did it in any way add value to you? Or when you got there, like they say, kwa ground, vitu were different. What do you wish somebody told you when you're heading into that?
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you. And I really am privileged also to be with Prof here. And I couldn't agree with him more. I think today what we saw was taking through cabinet nominees through a suitability assessment, capability, leadership, visioning, team, serious things that need to be put on the way, because then they actually begin to prepare you or to help you prepare yourself as the next leader who is going to take over a very, very huge responsibility. But coming back to whether mambo kwa ground is different or was different in my days, we were the first crop, if you recall, and therefore it required for us to be somewhat serious. Because, you are going into a space, that nobody had gone through before. I do recall, it didn't take me 3 days. It took me many days consulting, reading, preparing, so that I feel confident to be able to give the Kenyans on whose mandate I'm actually going to that office, to give them the confidence that, I know a thing or two. Again, I'm not trying to suggest that they didn't come out like they don't know, but a suitability assessment that takes such a short time, and half of the time perhaps is not being put to the core responsibilities of what a cabinet minister will be doing or expected to be doing, I think also isn't quite fair. If you look at the people who are themselves vetting, the committee, the parliamentarians, they've been taken through a rigorous process of trying to find their job themselves through the vote. It didn't take 2 hours. It didn't take 1 hour. It took months on end. So I think it's something that we need to, on an incremental basis, improve, give it the seriousness that it requires. Remember, this person, once they get into office, a whole 5 years, we will be depending on them to deliver the services and give life to the commitments and promises that the principal, who is in this case the president and his deputy, gave Kenyans. And what should I have been told at that point in time? Perhaps I should have been told that being a cabinet minister or principal secretary, because I started off as a principal secretary, is not equal to the right for you knowing everything. You should be vulnerable enough to want to go to continue learning, to continue leading, so that you become an effective leader over time. Did I get that going? I was very fortunate, because then we were approached by Harvard University, where they put up a program for ministers, cabinet ministers, across the globe, actually. And I was privileged, because then when I was in health, they did approach me, and I found it fit for me to join them in Harvard and to be able to be exposed. And it has really shaped my leadership journey since 2018, because nobody tells you. You are told, go, you're cabinet minister. Tomorrow, my youth agenda is on your shoulders. My gender agenda is on your shoulders. My public service agenda is on your shoulders. There isn't one school that somebody will take you through, the way normally would be taken through proper, well-structured orientation, induction. And I would really want to encourage, the current administration to take the issue of training, coaching, mentorship,
Yeah.
the team to be more effective, than really just allowing them to meander and to discover things for themselves. They become more useful.
Yeah.
They become more coherent as a unit and as a team.
Yeah.
And because cabinet makes decisions on account of collective responsibility, even if you as an individual shoulder individual responsibility for the decisions that you make for your docket, the collectiveness, the synergy around that collective approach is one to be encouraged. And the minute you take off with people with a common understanding, in terms of how they need to be able to deliver, can only leave them better, and can only give Kenyans a service for which we are anxiously waiting.
One of the initial standoffs was the position for Prime Cabinet Secretary. In hindsight, does the cabinet need a prefect?
I don't know whether a prefect is the right word to use because I haven't come across speaking it like it's a prefecting role here. Because when I look at the executive order number 1 of the year 2022 by President Ruto, he's done a good job in articulating the role of Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a mouthful. Yeah. But I guess that it was an issue of distinguishing hierarchy.
Yeah.
But if you look at exactly what the former cabinet minister, now CS Mudavadi, will be doing, is perhaps for me to add value in terms of coordinating other interventions and other activities that would hitherto be lost and tucked within line ministries. Yeah. I want to imagine working with the Deputy President Rigathi, that what they are doing is trying to again project more transparency in what happens, but importantly to remove the silo, the silo nature of line ministries. I guess if it is managed well by the holders of the offices, it can only bring more value. I wanted to suggest from where I sit that President Ruto must have learned one or two things in the first 10 years of the administration, the Uhuru administration, and therefore I want to propose he must be bringing in corrective actions to be able to deal with what didn't quite work and borrowing what has really worked. Yeah. I take note he has also split the ministries into several departments. Out of the ministry that I was responsible for, health, was only one department, but a proposal to break it into public health and the medical services is intelligent for me because that it helps you to focus more attention into the curative aspects of health, but also helps you to also deal with the public health aspects of health. So he's learned good lessons. Okay. Yes.
Prof, what is missing here between policy and action? Because there's been quite complaints from the general public that the actions are not going on fast enough. But the likes of Honorable Cecily Kariuki are churning out their policies. So their policies are there on paper, but it's the implementation that then becomes a problem. What is missing here?
Trevor, this is interesting. In fact, I've always argued, I actually taught policy, which is an introduction to policy. Yeah. And I always tell people that, look here, if you have no intention to implement a policy, then it's not a policy, it's just a piece of paper. Yeah. And the way I would like to look at policy, forget about the written policy, and the politicians understand this very well when they're running for office. You'd be asked, what is your education policy? Or what's your health policy? Or what is your food security policy? And I always tell people that if you look at that question in that colloquial manner, somebody's not asking you about a piece of paper you have somewhere on education. They're asking you a very basic question, that what do you see as the problem in education? And if you have the power, what will you actually do about it? Yeah. And to me, that's where I would like to pitch the policy discourses, rather than, so the piece of paper eventually just becomes a documentation of policy because of the way government actually works. Yes. So the question I would like to ask of this government, number one, is what's your education policy? What's your agriculture policy? And what I'm asking there is not necessarily that piece of paper. I'm asking, what do you see as the problem, and how do you propose to resolve it? And out of this now, you'll end up with, of course, policy positions and policy papers, and the policy will be articulated by the different leaders and all of those things. Yeah. You may end up changing a law here and there. You'll end up with programs, that help implement this policy. You'll end up with revisions and so on. But I think the problem, part of the problem we have in this country is a technocratic approach to policy, where you bring an expert to give you an excellent document, and then you find that you can't actually implement that. Yeah, and in fact, that's what I hope, that the sort of leadership that we're looking at in these ministries, a leadership that can operate at that level, where you come in and I think Honorable Mudavadi, for example, when he was discussing the economic issues in the country and issues around debt and all those sort of things, I think one of the things that I liked about that was that you could see that, he's articulating clearly what the Kenya Kwanza government thinks is the problem, and then thinks is the solution, without necessarily having a piece of paper outside there. So basically, this is the sort of leadership we expect, that the CSs that will be involved, that the president themselves and so on, will be moving us towards a particular direction where they can actually say that yes, you see, we've changed the broader approach to, say, fiscal management in the country, and we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and then of course that is now backed. It is backed with policy documents, is backed with legal, and legislative instruments, and then of course is implemented through programs. Otherwise, this particular approach where we focus on pieces of paper and calling it policy, I think is quite immature. We need to move further so that leaders in government can be able to articulate what the issues are and what they're doing about those issues real time, within their ministries, written or unwritten.
Okay. CS, whenever Kenyans want some action done, they're always told something like, there's a way government works. So how does government work in hindsight? What were the challenges from your perspective? What makes things move slow or fast?
That's a very good excuse, Trevor. That there's a way government works is equal to saying we are unwilling to change status quo. Some of us went beyond it to say that is not how government was created to work. Government is created to give a service to the citizen. So we can't keep on saying this is how things are done here. But bureaucracy and technocrats, whenever they want to maintain the status quo, then that's very good language. It's a language which is one of an excuse. I am hopeful that because of the promises and commitments that have been made by the current administration, then they will not be coming in to sit, because that is how government works. A government pretty much works like any other organism, organization, be it private, be it academia, be it research, to deliver a service, to have an impact, to improve the lives of Kenyans. So, that excuse, I think that the time for that excuse is long gone. And as far as I'm concerned, it is possible, because I've seen it being done in the time that I've been in cabinet. I've seen it being done. I have seen status quo being challenged and things being done differently, and in fact, being done quite rapidly. So, but if you want to sit and warm your chair, that is very good language.
But see, as clean water for all, is that an achievable dream, and what will it take?
Trevor, it is achievable, really. And if you go and familiarize yourself with the SDGs, there's a global commitment, and Kenya is a signatory of the SDGs, where clean water for all, just like food, food insecurity, moving everybody to be able to have good food, good quality, available quantities that you deserve as a human being, away from starvation, all these are achievable. Health for all achievable. What will it take for this to be achieved? It is again moving away from the excuse of documents on top of documents, consultation on top of consultations, to action and putting resources where the priorities are. Look, everything here is a priority. Healthcare for all is a priority. Water for all, sanitation, yet we have the resources that if we were to prioritize and say the coming 1-2 years, we are keeping it simple and starting with what would be our priorities and making sure that we go all the way full throttle as a government without pulling in different directions. It is doable. The point at which I left the ministry, the government in February, we were round about 60 69% of water coverage, meaning the remainder of the population to be covered is less than what already has been attained.
Yeah.
But now we must be careful to protect what already has been attained, because I've also seen a disease that is sometimes you can find it in the public sector. Undo to do.
Yeah.
You know, Trevor, if you've been doing well in a space and I come into that space, to prove I'm smarter, I may want to dismantle what Trevor did so that I am seen to be doing and doing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it is primitive, but it happens in management, not just in Kenya. It does happen. So I am hoping this administration is going to build upon what has already been attained.
Yeah.
On seaward sanitation, for instance, we are just about 30%. Seaward sanitation, 30%. Meaning on seaward sanitation, you have 70 to go. We can do it quite easily. And I'm liking the conversation of involving the private sector to be able to invest even in this public good.
Yeah.
It's been an excuse that public good can only be delivered by government. I challenge that. And I challenge the teams that I was working with in water.
Yeah.
And I did leave a couple of proposals which have lent themselves from a point of very, very casual assessment to privatization.
Yeah.
They ought to move to the private route. Galana Kulalu, for example,
yeah,
ought to be in the hands of a private sector to be able to give Kenyans the food that we deserve, to be able to actually give us more than we require so that we can also export and generate income for us.
Yeah.
So it will require just decisions that are smart, that are coherent so that we are not again moving all over the space, that are prioritized and there is an understanding that these are the priorities for the country for now, barring any external shocks, i.e. out of climate change like what it is we are seeing now.
Yeah.
These goals are achievable, and that is why we signed as a country to the SDG framework.
But is there a blueprint of some sort that somebody can stick to so that there's no undoing to do like what you're saying? Is there a blueprint in all these CSS lots that when Trevor comes in, he knows this is how far Honorable Cecily Kariuki has gotten, this is all I need to do to reach the end?
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Water Eva, I was just to cite that. Again, appreciating the team I worked with, fantastic professionals. We were able to design what we call the National Water Sector Investment Plan for the first time. And therefore, we have an idea the kind of projects that we require to come into the water space and how they are going to be prioritized in terms of the funding.
Yeah.
Some of that is what is going to the private sector. We call it NAWASIP. I believe it will be a good tool for Honorable Alice once she goes through to be able to use. I also was privileged, and I want to thank the 12th Parliament, because we were able to take through the water policy, which is now the sessional paper number 1 on water policy that is projecting, again, the interventions that we require in that sector.
Yeah.
Again, very lucky. Again, my team were able to churn out a sanitation policy for the first time. That was left in draft form, and I want to believe that CS, the incoming CS, is going to take it through to fruition, but importantly,
yeah,
be able to implement the interventions in all this, so that they are not pieces of paper like Prof wants to suggest, because pieces of paper is also another industry. I don't think that is a business Wanjiku, Onyango, Juma is waiting for. They are waiting for an intervention to be able to have clean water in the quantity, qualities that they deserve,
yeah,
to be able to move around the economic spaces where there are.
Yeah.
We are looking for the health, the UHC policy, again, which has been taken through Parliament. We are looking for that to be implemented by reforming the institutions that have been earmarked for reforms, including NHIF and KEMSA, to be able to deliver medicine to that person in Wajir, to that person in Homa Bay,
yeah,
without having to go and you're being referred to the private sector,
okay,
to get your medication. So doable, very well articulated.
Yeah.
Move to action.
Okay. Let's take a quick break. Prof, I'll come with you. Let's take a quick break on Monday Report. When we come back, we're still talking about the vetting of the cabinet nominees. Are the main questions being asked? Can you see that they're the people who can take this forward? Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. When we come back, I'll read some of your feedback in just a bit.